next session is the Quality Jobs Trifecta, fueling growth for workers, employers, and economies. Please welcome to the Horizon stage John Clifton, CEO of Gallup, Portia Wu, Secretary of Labor for the State of Maryland, Dennis Surratt, Executive Vice President and Chief Development Officer at National Urban League, and Jenny Sparandara, Managing Director, Head of Programs, Global Philanthropy at J.P. Morgan Chase.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to have a discussion on the importance of quality jobs. And I think to kind of set the stage for this conversation, Gallup did a study 20 years ago where we went out to over 140 countries around the world. We actually made phone calls to 40 of the countries, and to the other 100 countries, we seriously showed up in their homes. We did it in about 140 different languages, and we asked them, what do you want most in life? And you know what the number one thing that they came back with was? They want a good job. Not just any job, they want a good job. Now the next question, of course, is why? Why is it that what the whole world wants is a good job? And it ultimately comes down to three things. Number one, financial security, money. A good job includes a good paycheck. And again, we've also dived into studying happiness, and we aren't quite there where we would say that money buys happiness, but what we can say conclusively is that it is hard to be happy without it. And the second one is, we've learned this from philosophers since time immemorial, which is most people manifest their purpose through their job. And you need to have a purpose in life in order to feel like every single day when you get up in the morning that what you do matters. And in the absence of that, everything else collapses. But then the third thing on why a good job or a great job is so critical, because of how it impacts your well-being. We asked in this same survey for the past 20 years whether or not people experience debilitating stress, sadness, pain, or worry. You know what we found? People who feel engaged in their jobs are half as likely to feel debilitating stress, sadness, pain, and worry on a daily basis than someone who has a job where they are actively disengaged. So when the whole world says to us, what is it that you want? They want a good job, and what that means is a good paycheck, a job with purpose, and a job that helps support their overall well-being. But if that is what matters, and that's what the world wants, then how many great jobs are we delivering on? Because another part of our survey is that we go out to the entire world and we ask people who are employed full-time for an employer on whether or not they're engaged in that job. And we find that only 20% are, which means 80% aren't. Sometimes we often say that we're closer to colonizing Mars than we are fixing the world's broken workplace. But if quality of jobs are that important, why aren't we doing better? And that's why we have this distinguished panel today. So, Jenny, if you don't mind, let's start with you, because I know that J.P. Morgan Chase has talked a lot about what's fundamental to a great economy is an inclusive economy. But can you say more specifically what you do as an employer to create that inclusive economy? And also, why is it that that's so critical for a company to create an inclusive economy?
Yeah, absolutely, John. And I love that question. And T actually teed this up really nicely, because if you're a company that's been around for more than 100 years, you know deeply that the fate of your business is tied to the fate of the communities you serve and you work in. And I think that's very true for J.P. Morgan Chase. I'm fortunate enough to work in the part of the firm that deploys money through our philanthropy. But it's really enlightened self-interest that is driving that work to invest in communities. And when we're in a room like this, I think folks may think of us as a funder, we are, or as an employer, we are. We have about 317,000 people who work for the firm globally. But don't forget, we're also advising clients that range from mom and pop shops in local cities and towns to major Fortune 50 companies. And a consistent through line in all of that is how important talent is to their bottom line, to their productivity. So it's something we know from our own experiences, but we also see and hear every day. And in that, what's exciting to me is that we have an opportunity to both live our community agenda and our corporate agenda, authentically and together. So we think about this question: how do you make sure there are good jobs available to people, that you're supporting people in navigating what those opportunities are all the time? Because we're thinking about it in terms of our own talent strategy. As well as how can we be a productive partner to lots of folks like those in the room today who are working on this question from lots of different angles. And one of the things I liked about the way you introduced the conversation topic is, this isn't a semantic point, but I think sometimes if we talk about job quality, we lose people because they don't really know what we mean. And when you start to break it down, as you were, it's really fundamental, and it's things that I would venture we are all thinking about. So I also think that's incredibly important. And we know that if people are not financially stable, they're not able to bring their best selves to work. They have lower retention, they have higher turnover, they stop out on career pathways. So for us, being able to kind of really crack that issue matters deeply, both in terms of our own hiring practices, but how we kind of engage thoughtfully with our clients, our customers, and just people in communities around the world.
Gallup and the Walton Family Foundation and JFF came out with a report this morning. And one of the findings is that young people in this country have a lot of optimism about the future, but they also aren't sure where to go or what to do.
Yeah.
And they're looking for direction. And of course, we also find that the first group that they go to are their parents. But then we interview the parents, and we say to the parents, how do you feel about this? And they go, well, I got to tell you, I'm not sure I know fully what I'm supposed to be telling them about the future of work, of education. Does the private sector care about that? And if so, what would a company like yours be doing to help improve that?
Yeah, we care. We're hearing it also. When T. Duckett was at JP Morgan Chase, she was the executive sponsor for a program we run called the Fellowship Initiative, which is a mentoring program for young men and young women. And we actually had a graduation of high school and early college students just a couple weeks ago. And our CEO asked the young people, what do you need more of from us? What could we do? So Jamie Dimon is turning to these very unshy, unreserved young people. And they asked for this, navigation support. They remarked how little career advice and college advice they had gotten through school, and their experiences aren't atypical, as you know. And so the answer is there's a lot more we need to do collectively. I'll pick on maybe 2 or 3 quick things so others can join in here. But I thought Maria's point around not kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of systems, but really constructively looking at how we address them, that really resonates with me. At the firm, we're coming up on 10 years of supporting career pathway investments for young people around the United States, and there's a lot we've learned through that work. I think creating more spaces where the private sector, higher ed, nonprofit education and workforce organizations can come together and really animate the labor market information and the kind of survey data and quantitative data that you and others are providing, but then kind of help folks figure out, how do you activate on that? What does that really mean? How is that showing up in our business? Is something we can spend more time kind of refining and evolving. And maybe the last thing I'll say is, we're living this, and I don't know, and I'd be curious whether it's useful for us to distinguish between youth pathways and kind of adult pathways, because We have this for people we are hiring into entry-level roles at our company every day, which is how do we get you from that maybe entry-level retail or ops role into your next great job, and what kind of support and advising can we provide, and how do you do that in a way that's durable, sustainable, and at scale? And I think we have ideas, but it's one of the reasons that I'm excited to be in this group over the course of the next 2 days.
Dennis, when you think of quality jobs, what does it mean when there is an absence of quality jobs to communities here in the United States?
Wow.
What are the consequences of when it's something that we're not prioritizing, and what goes wrong?
So, in a word, I would say Ferguson. If you're going to connect to something extreme, when there are no jobs that are present, when there are no jobs that are fair, that are paying a fair wage, when there are gaps in teachers, when there's inadequate systems, when there's inadequate housing, when the employers have primarily left the community, then those are all symptoms of what would continuously destabilize a community. And so when Michael Brown was murdered in 2014, that was and Ferguson blew up. That was the end result of all of these issues being exacerbated and the strain that was on that community. And so there are tons of little Fergusons all over the country. There are tons of small cities that are dealing with these issues that don't have adequate jobs that are paying a living wage, where people can basically take care of themselves. And so the building for us at the Urban League was, what do you do in an environment like that? What do you do when you see that? So there was an understanding that at some point the battling, the fighting was going to end. But bringing the existing businesses together, bringing the church community together, the community leaders, the current corporations that were there, the state government, the city government, the local authorities in, and really let's start dissecting what's going on. In that city, there was over 20% unemployment. Black unemployment was over 40%. Single mothers were the majority of the population. And so how do you deal with the question of quality jobs? That question, you can't talk to the community and say, how do you feel about quality jobs? That's an irrelevant question when survival is really what is happening here. And so our role at the Urban League was really to think through solutions. So we spoke to employers like JPMorgan Chase. We spoke to Centene Corporation in St. Louis, and we talked to them about extending their businesses into the community to listen to what was happening in the community and decide to start training, to start hiring. So they went through our centers to do soft skill building, to get them ready for the interviews. Then they went into the interviews, but they were also shown a pathway once they got into the job. It wasn't just an interview for a job, it was a trajectory towards a sustainable career with a living wage. And so when you connect the dot to employers, to community leaders, to nonprofit organizations, understanding what are the complex issues in a community, that kind of collaboration is what could work. All right, but we have to do that one community at a time. And so we have 92 affiliates across the country. We're in 36 states. When I see JFF, when I see Empower and all these other organizations that are focused in this space, connecting not just a good job, but connecting it into the school systems first and creating a trajectory for grade-to-grade success there, and then getting them into what would be a credentialing career, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year degree or a credential for a job, but it's connecting to a living wage, then we're on a pathway to make sense. That makes sense. So connecting to JFF, they have great tools that have helped us as an organization connect to our corporate partners to help connect to their HR departments to see how we can guide them on their systems once they leave the soft skill building systems that we have inside. So that trajectory gives confidence to that end worker in such a way that they know that not only is it possible for them to get a job, but there's a possibility for them to sustain and then grow in that job in a space that they can see themselves taking care of themselves, see themselves taking care of their family, and then create a vision for their children. I'm a father of, I'll just say I have 4 Gen Zs, all right? 4 Gen Z daughters. Let's be clear, I'm just a servant, all right? I am just a servant, they are the boss of me, all right? And it is paying attention to what it is that they want and what they aspire to, but they're seeing what you're doing, and we're connecting the dots. In poor communities, they don't have that privilege, so through nonprofits like ours, we have to create them. And then we can, that kind of pathway is a start, and maybe we can make some headway.
You know, Dennis, I think the most important word that you used in that entire thing was listening.
It's undervalued, but it's the most important.
But why? You know, I think there are many people with big hearts, and they're not trying to do the wrong thing. So why is it that there's this absence of listening, and what can people do more to make sure that they're doing the right kind of listening?
We love to intellectualize stuff. We love to, as adults, we want to craft and create the answers and the solutions to everything under the sun, and I've learned through my daughters that is always the wrong path to follow. It is. So if I've defined any level of success I've had in my life, it's connected to my children. When you learn to listen and understand, seek to understand and respond, and then create a way to have them explore, then you learn in that process. And so one of the things we integrate into our process, one of the big issues that we're hearing, we did a survey with Gen Zs, and the outcome of that survey was just that also. We got to listen and meet our young people where they are, and then seek to surround them with kind of the supportive services, opportunities, organizations, leaders that can bring them along that path. So at the Urban League, we have a BEAT program, a Business Executive Exchange program that connects to young people in college. Right, we have a Project Ready program that creates opportunities where organizations like JP Morgan Chase or Honda or any of these large organizations that connect into engineering careers to create exposure opportunities. When we're able to listen to them, hear and respond, and then craft and create, then we have a future path. But as long as we continue to stay in our own heads, thinking that we know something, my kids call me old. Antiquated yesterday.
Oh, how dare they? How dare they?
But it is what it is, and you got to accept it. It's like, okay, fine, tell me, and we'll figure this out. Then we'll start making and creating things that matter and that are sustainable.
Secretary Wu, we have now talked about this thing of listening. There's multiple ways to listen. One is to engage with people. One is to follow data. And you do that very closely. In fact, you showed me a rather disturbing trend that is going to haunt me. It'll probably concern everyone else. Can you talk about that, please? And also, what's the government of Maryland doing about it?
Well, thanks, John. Thank you to Maria and JFF. It's great to be here. We were in the green room. I was pulling up my tablet and thinking about Gen Z and young millennials. A trend we are seeing in Maryland, and it looks like this is a trend really nationwide, is lower labor force participation among young people, 20 to 34, especially 20 to 24. We are seeing drops. If you look back over the last 20 years, and we also broke it out by men and women, among young men in particular, there are some pretty stark drops. In Maryland, we've seen about, I think it's the 25 to 34, we've seen maybe a 5% drop in labor force participation in men, about a 5% increase in women over that period. But among men 20 to 24, those are those critical initial years getting into your careers. I want to say in Maryland, at least, it was close to a 13% drop over that time. And nationally, you see some significant drops that are not made up by college matriculation. I want to be really clear, because you're not seeing the same concurrent increase in that time. So, what do we do with that? I think the interesting findings you all have already surfaced show that young people actually are eager to have that information, but they just don't know where to start. So in the state, we've done a couple of things. In Maryland, we have career counselors in every school. That's as part of this big blueprint for our state's educational future. It's just a start, and I have to say, I have 3 girls, not 4. So, but I get the inside intel. Oh my goodness, 5. Sorry.
Why is everybody bragging? I have 2 boys. This is not right.
But I get, I say, okay, so you have that career counselor. How are you experiencing that as a teenager? Are you signing up for that internship? Are you doing it? And I will say there's still a lot of learnings there about how can we reach more young people where they are. How can we provide work-based learning experiences? Because just having an adult come and talk at you in a room for an hour, that's just not going to bridge the gap. So our state has actually set a goal by 2030 of having 45% of high school graduates attain high school level registered apprenticeship or industry recognized credential. Now, like a lot of goals set by a legislature, that was sort of a number put out there. We have a long way to go to get there, but something we're seeing as part of this work is it's not that there's undersubscribed levels of interest. Granted, many students could know more about this, but we are seeing in our career and technical education programs, the interest from parents and students outpacing the seats 5, 7, 10-fold, right? Students and parents want this programming because over the years we have underinvested in them, and I'd say that's a national trend. We moved towards college instead of career. I do think we all need to think about how do we create those opportunities, provide that information, look closely at how different groups are experiencing the same phenomenon, and then create those connections and pathways. So that's using all the tools we've got. Like if you've got dual enrollment, and there's a lot, and I think in every state, make sure those are oriented and connected to your career goals and your sectors of growth in your state. Thinking about how high school level internships, summer jobs, during the year school learning and working experiences, and of course including apprenticeship, in that you can start apprenticeship at the high school level, working with your community colleges, employers, and others to try to build that ecosystem to provide those opportunities. Because if we don't get people in on these on-ramps, we saw that with the Great Recession and earlier recessions, if you fail to get people in that moment early in their career, they're going to face struggles being work attached, for their whole lives. So it's really, the time is now.
What is specific action that Maryland has taken to increase the amount of quality jobs within the state? Or have you seen programs in other states that you said, wow, that really worked, that's a program that every state should adopt?
So I think we recognize we have to lead with policy and procurement. First of all, those are 2 of the levers we have at the state. So we've increased the minimum wage in Maryland to $15 an hour. We're looking at how do we make sure when the state spends dollars, either as an employer or through state contracts, that we use those contracts to provide opportunities. So to have local hire, to provide for apprenticeship and internship requirements, and also support for the employers. They're saying, well, you can give me that number, but that doesn't necessarily make sense with my business model. You have to build it in for everyone, so everyone's competing on a level playing field. Those are certainly some of the pieces. And then I think figuring out how we can partner with the private sector to understand where can we meet your needs. We know that employers are seeking this talent, but how can we figure out how to put the puzzle pieces together?
Awesome. Well, we have a little bit of time left, and I know that the theme of our conference this year is Dare to be Brave. So can we exhibit bravery on this stage with either a recommendation, a bold statement, but something that that's informed our human algorithms on what we believe is the best thing that can be done in order to accelerate the amount of great jobs or quality jobs that either exist here in the United States or around the world. Jenny, do you want to get us started?
Ooh, okay, yes. There's so much that's been said that is just clicking with me, so I'm appreciating everybody's perspectives here. I think 2 things. One, and I think some discussion has happened already about this, but much of the next day and a half will cover it. This is a complicated time, and I think we have to embrace that complexity and resist any urge to kind of be the ostrich or put your head in the sand. And I say that specifically with regard to job design and how jobs are changing. So I think there's something there for us to run towards rather than away from when we think about AI and automation. And maybe the second thing, I'll take a twofer, is I think it's brave to do more. And I think picking up on the Secretary's comments, we need to do more. We need more opportunity, scaling more. We need to work the phones, tell our clients and customers we want you to join us in these efforts. So I think we need to do more. I think we should acknowledge that if we're business as usual, we're going to get business as usual results. Dennis?
Well, I'll start with, yes, this is a challenging time. All right, we are, in my opinion, fighting for the country we want to live in. All right, and that's not a step away, that's a step in. All right, there is no, we talk about daring to be brave. We talk about stepping in and fighting. That is what we do. And fighting looks different ways in different communities, but is what we do. So for the Urban League, I know as soon as we understood what was going to be happening, it was how do we protect the communities in which we're serving across the country, knowing that there was going to be a direction shift in some ways. So my challenge was, where do I go? So our first move was I went to the Business Roundtable, and now we're part of the Business Roundtable work group to start talking to the employers about ways that they can shore up the jobs that and relook at how their hiring practices are working, and deciding what tools are going to be necessary to guide them. We think that corporations a lot of times have the answers, and a lot of times they're seeking answers so that they can craft around it. So let's be those that are the ones that are guiding. So we stepped into that. And so part of our bold idea was to say, we're going to the corporations to say, here's what's going on. And if we're going to protect those that we serve, we're stepping into that. The other thing is we went to the National Governors Association. Let's talk to the governors, because there's going to be an increased need for services when some of the shifting occurs, and are they ready? Do they even see it? So we decided that we were the catalyst, or more to the point, we were the solution we were going to seek. If we're not going to wait for other people to say, this is what I think needs to happen, we're going to say, this is what we're seeing, because we're the Urban League and we see what's happening on the ground. Do you? And if not, you need to see it, because we're going to let you know what it is. And now let's bring everyone together and start crafting solutions in a way that preserves and protects the people, the individuals in the community, so they can protect their families, which is a community stabilizer. So when you're focused on jobs, when you're focused on credentialing, when you have people living a fair wage, then they spend. And they're providing tax revenue, which supports infrastructure, which supports the schools, which supports the hospitals and policing, and all the things that we aspire for an effective community. So I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, I'm agnostic to party when it comes to the fact that this is what we need to do, and if you say this is not what you want to do, I get to challenge you, because I'm not walking away. All right, so the bold solution is aligning with other organizations like ours. Let us use our convening strength, but to bring all the parties together to say, let's step in and let's craft a way to protect our citizens so that we find a way to preserve the nation that we have and build it in the way that we want.
Madam Secretary, you have the final word. What's a bold statement, initiative that you think everybody should have in mind?
So I think that as institutions, we get really used to the structures that we have, and it's time to let go of some of them. So that's going to look different depending on where we are. I'll say for the workforce system, that means not just thinking that entry-level job is good enough, I've got my placement, check. The good jobs are out there, but they're going to be higher skilled jobs. We must push through and hold ourselves accountable to get people up the rungs of the ladder. For K through 12 education, that's going to mean maybe letting go of some of your requirements and constraints on scheduling and being comfortable with pushing high school students in a different direction than they've been. Same for 4 years and 2-year colleges, I would say. Like, let's not focus on our fiefdoms and our, student share and our transferability. Like, we have to let go of those shackles. If we do not break through them, we are not serving people. And then I'd say to the employers, actually, the first thing at top of my mind for this, and maybe it's because we're focused on young people, is get rid of that 18 and older requirement. I cannot tell you how many times it is internships. We need engineers, but you have to be 18 and older. That means not a single high schooler is going to walk through your door. So we just need to think about these barriers and look at our structures and, blow some of those walls out.
On the subject of listening, the fact that Gallup has collected so much information where people are saying, please, I want a quality job. Thank you to the three of you for being those leaders that are helping us deliver on all of them. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.